and welcome to the first battle report for 6th edition fantasy. This is not only the first battle report we're playing with 6th edition, but it's also Michael's first game of 6th edition fantasy ever. If I get defeated by him, therefore, in his first ever game, I will particularly bear a particular level of shame. These are armies that we're planning on taking to a 6th edition tournament later this year, so this is really also kind of a good opportunity to test these armies out for the first time. I'm going to just talk you through a little bit of what's in my dwarves, and then we'll have a chat about what's in Michael's army. So first of all, I have got 4 big units in my army. I've got a big unit of 20 miners that I've recently finished. Unit of 20 hammers, 17 hammers plus characters here in the front rank. Another unit of 20 clan warriors, clansmen, and 15 slayers. And then that's backed up by 10 thunderers, an organ gun, a bolt thrower, and a gyrocopter. I ummed and ahed about whether trying to include a cannon in here as well, but I'd had to have dropped some of the hammers and some of the miners, and I wanted some of that hitting power. So we'll see how that does. In terms of magic items, I've got some interesting runic combos, which I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I'm going to throw them up on the screen now, so that Michael forgets them as a surprise when they go up. So this is what I have given my lord, and this is what some of the other characters in the army have got. Okay, without further ado, let's turn over to Michael's army and talk about all this cavalry that you've brought.
Yeah, so inspired by your Britannians, I've got 2 units of silver helms.
They're not in the lance formation. Go on.
Yeah, sadly not allowed.
So 2 units of 5. Have they got banners and
They've got banners
musicians
and champions,
but no musicians.
no musicians.
No musicians. Okay.
2 wizards.
Okay.
Level 4 archmage and a level 2.
Okay. So yeah, 6 spell levels there.
Yeah, so
Ow.
8 power dice. 7 dragon princes with there's a commander who will probably join them. 11 archers to make up the spare points. 2 bolt throwers, a chariot, 2 in a chariot. 16 sword masters. Again, there's a commander in there, and 2 eagles.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's close as to whether you outnumber me. So it feels like you're close to outnumbering me.
Well, that's good. That means you're scared.
Yeah. Well, I am genuinely nervous about this. This is going to be. We're just going to play a straight up pitched battle. No fancy pantsy scenarios. None of this thing. Sort of more complex stuff from the book for this game. So we will get over now onto deployment. I'll switch over to the deployment map. That should be coming up on camera now. Hopefully you can now see how we have deployed, and then I will now just move over to a quick panorama of how the board looks. Now we've got it all set up. Okay, so yeah, here we go. So on the dwarven flank, we've got the thunderers, the slayers, castling up with the organ gun and the gyrocopter, clansmen, the general's unit of hammerers, and a bolt thrower in the tower where normally the shadow warriors would be hiding. But there are no shadow warriors in the elven army this time. On the elven flank, silver helms coming around the side of the wood with an eagle lurking behind them. An eagle bolt thrower next to the dragon princes, and then the other side of the elven army, their wizard lord. We don't know who the elven general is yet, we haven't rolled for that yet. Hiding in the unit of archers. Second level 2 wizard in with the sword masters. Another unit of silver helms with another eagle bolt thrower at the back, and the chariot on the end. And yeah, the elves have rolled up on the Law of Heavens, not the High Elf magical chart. They've got basically every spell except for, I think, Uranan's Thunderbolt. 2 Comets of Cassandora. This is looking worrisome for the dwarves. But let's grab a dice and find out who the elven general is. So yeah, Michael, roll it up.
In the order they are on here. 1.
That
is the archmage.
The archmage is the general. Okay, so we kill him, the whole army runs away, yeah? Right, so let's kill him. Okay, well, so we've established who the elven general is. Let's roll and see who gets first turn. I finished deploying first, so I'm getting a +1. It's worrying from the elves, and for the dwarves, a 2. Okay, yeah, so Michael, first turn, let me ask, you get to choose, do you want to go first?
I do,
Or second?
definitely
Are
want to
you
go
sure
first.
you want to go first?
Sure, I want to go first.
Okay, well, let's start the Elven first turn then, and we will catch up with you after that. First turn for the Elves then. It's only really going to go one way in a game with something as mainly immobile as a dwarf army and as fleet of foot as an elven army, even before we factor in that this is mostly a cavalry elven army with 2 great eagles. Yeah, pretty much everything in the elven army advanced. It was all that I could do as the dwarf player to decide to hold the line and wait for the inevitable charges to come, albeit thankfully they wouldn't be coming in the first turn at least. We will catch up with how the Elven Magic phase went in just a moment. End of High Elf turn 1 then. The Elves have swept around the flank of the wood, have advanced towards the Lord's unit, are coming up around and over the hill over here, and somewhat tellingly, sneaky shot from the chariot felled one of the Thunderers. 2 of the Slayers have been killed by the bolt thrower over there, and somewhat worryingly, the Comet of Cassandora went off with irresistible force thanks to a sneaky elven reroll. Yeah, we're about to roll and find out whether or not I get hit by lots and lots of comets. It's a d6 roll. On 4 up, it's a comet.
Oh!
That's what we like to see. That's what we like to see.
We add another token.
I foolishly forgot to set the GoPro recording for this turn, so here briefly you can just see how things lie on the map between Elf turn 1 and Dwarf turn 1. Some initial blows on the Dwarven force there, and then the Dwarven force advances and caused harm to itself. It did, however, give the Elves a little taste of Dwarven engineering. Here's how it actually went. Okay, so the Thunderers have shot and killed one of the Silver Helms. The organ gun, with a loud yell of bang from me, misfired. Luckily it didn't break, but it can't shoot this turn or next turn, which doesn't bode well for it. The Warriors and the Hammerers have just redeployed a little bit, manoeuvred, to give the Dragon Princes a choice of targets to shoot. The bolt thrower shot at the eagle over there, but failed to hit. And Comet of Cassandora was dispelled successfully on exactly what was needed to dispel it. And best of all, half of that sneaky unit of archers has been thoroughly steam cleaned. As we go into Elven turn 2, let's see how we do. Elf turn 2 then started with a vengeance. The Elves, as predicted, sweeping in where they could and causing damage to the Dwarven force. There was a fair bit of rules checking that had to happen during this turn. Little bits and pieces like what happens when a war machine is charged. Do the crew pile up still at the front? Yes, they do. What is the range for standard shoot? I couldn't remember what it was in 6th edition, but as it turns out, it is still basically more than half the charge distance. So for the Elven Chariot, it wasn't going to be in charge range. We didn't need to worry about standing and shooting at it this turn. That doesn't mean it wasn't going to be something we would need to worry about next turn. Even down to multiple shots. Of course, multiple shots weren't a unique special rule in 5th edition. But by 6th edition, they were something that was a universal special rule. But interestingly, does not apply to repeater bolt throwers. It's only specifically kind of handheld weapons like repeater handguns, repeater crossbows that have to use the multiple shots rule and therefore get a -1 to hit. Repeater bolt throwers just shoot multiple shots and don't care about negatives for firing multiple shots, as my dwarves learned to their cost. We'll catch up with how things went in terms of magic and other elements of the combat in just a minute, but for the moment, just here coming up is how things looked on the map at the end of Elf turn 2. As you can see then, the Elves had basically advanced to almost everything was on the Dwarven half of the field. This would be a theme for pretty much the whole game. The net tightens then around the Dwarven army. The Chariot and Silver Helms closing in. The Swordmasks coming over the hill. The Eagles swooped in and killed my poor organ gun. The Dragon Princes, being the cowardly pointy-eared get that they are, instead of charging into the midst of the Dwarven army, have circled around this house to hide behind it for a little bit. Meanwhile, the archers turned around, opened fire on the bolt thrower on the organ gun, and did nothing. The bolt thrower also fired at the gyrocopter, and did nothing. The bolt thrower over here opened fire on the hammerers and killed one. Meanwhile, this unit of Silver Helms is doing something. I'm not quite sure. It's sweeping around the side of this building here. We will see what happens to them in just a moment. Dwarf. Oh yeah, the dwarf elven magic phase continues. The level 2 mage cast Comet of Cassandora again, and I was forced to roll out one of my runes of spell breaking. The other elven mage missed casting Comet of Cassandora by 1. Let's see how many more of these comets I can survive. Dwarf turn 2. Here we go. Dwarf turn 2 then. Not much more than some shuffling of feet from the dwarven ranks, just kind of adjusting their position so that they were ready to receive the inevitable elven charges. I continued to have fun with the gyrocopter, which I debated whether to take a gyrocopter in this force or a flame cannon. I've got the classic big oak keg flame cannon model, which is painted bright red, as it should be. And they're both exactly the same points, and they're both rare choices. In the end, I went with the gyrocopter just because I really enjoy being able to fly around the place and use a breath template. There's few greater joys, I think, in any version of fantasy than being able to cover something with a large teardrop template and look at your opponent in the eye and go, "See them? Under there? They're all dead, they are!" Yeah, just like that. The flame cannon has the same potential, but it has a greater risk of blowing itself up, which reduces the risk of steam-cleaned fun. Okay, so the Thunderers have not moved, but opened fire on the Tyrannot chariot. All 5 of them hit, and only 1 of them wounded. The Slayers, meanwhile, have manoeuvred themselves so that they are facing both the Silver Helms and the Swordmasters. The Dwarven Anvil over here kind of rejiggled their position so that they're not in the same trap manoeuvre, but positioned ready to counter whatever the Elves throw at them. The bolt thrower pivoted on the spot, turned around and shot 2 of the Silver Helms dead. And the organ gun, the gyrocopter has continued steam cleaning this unit of elven archers. There are now 2 archers and the wizard left. They are resolutely refusing to panic as we go into elven turn. Oh, and the miners. The miners did not turn up. We go into elven turn 3. Any charges?
Oh, yes.
Right, okay. Catch us after the break. You may notice as we go through these that the elven turns are somewhat longer than the dwarven turns. That's probably, watching this back, that's probably indicative of how things were progressing during the game. I think Michael used his elves better generally during this game, you'll find. Certainly he enjoyed their greater mobility far more than I perhaps enjoyed the static nature of my dwarves. I think it's one of those things of dwarves do a couple of things really well. They're dead fighty and they are dead shooty. I sound like an orc talking about it like that, but they only do one of them really well at a time. So if you're going to lean into the shooty list, then you probably ought to lean into it all the way. If you're going to lean into axes of the dwarves, the enemy of the dwarves, the axes of the dwarves are upon you, or whichever way around it is Tolkien has it, then you probably want to lean into that as strongly as possible. And I wonder if perhaps that's where I went wrong in this game, in that I just didn't have the firepower to hammer the elves from a static position, but likewise I didn't have enough hard-hitting troops to just form a kind of bristling, dwarven-bearded testudo and march down the centre of the fields going, "Come on then, lads, come at us!" I think perhaps I also had cavalry envy during this game, missing my beloved Bretonians somewhat, watching the elves for a change have all the fancy shiny knights riding around the board, causing trouble for my dwarves, swooping around the place, or the eagles. And yeah, I think this is one of the rare times where Michael held the magical superiority edge over my army compared to, for example, my damsel and her amazing Curse of Chicken Boona. We'll catch up with how the elves did in detail in just a moment, but as you can see, they've got the Slayers firmly boxed in.
The Slayers, I think, are probably one of the MVP of this game, and I think perhaps it's time I painted yet more bristly, orange-bearded dwarves. End of High Elf turn 3 then. The Tyrannot Chariot declared a charge on the Thunderers. The Thunderers did much better with their shooting and the standard shoot reaction, and killed the Tyrannot Chariot before it got off the ground. They were less fortunate against the Great Eagle. It only managed to kill one of them, but they didn't drive it off as I had hoped. Meanwhile, in the centre, there was much consideration as to about which units might charge the Troll Slayers. It was made slightly easier for the High Elves after this unit of Silver Helms failed a panic test as a result of the death of the Tyrannot Chariot and rolled 18. 18? Yeah, 18 for the distance that they fled as a result. The Swordmasters and the Dragon Princes crashed into the Troll Slayers. The commander of the Swordmasters fought a challenge against the Dragon Slayer, but was unable to harm him, suffering a wound in return. Between them, though, they chopped down 3 of the Troll Slayers, suffering no casualties in return. Meanwhile, the Comet of Cassandora has got off again. We will be rolling in a minute to see whether or not it comes crashing down and smashes these Dwarven units. And the Bolt Throwers did better this turn, inflicting 2 wounds on the Gyrocopter, leaving just 1 wound remaining. That being said, then let's roll and see what happens with the Comet. Oh no!
It goes off.
Comet of Cassandora goes down. So there's 1 marker there.
It goes D6 inches.
Yep.
4 inches. So it hits any units within 4 inches.
Well, that's going to be both units of dwarves, I think, to be honest, isn't it?
2d6 strength 5 hits to hit both.
Okay, so the Hammerers, how many 2d6 do they take?
8.
8 hits to the Hammerers, and the Warriors? 4. Okay, strength 5, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, this could be quite painful. Warriors or Hammerers first? Hammerers first.
Hammerers first, 8.
Of course.
So 3's to wound?
3's to wound. That's all bar 3, so that's 5
wounds.
5 wounds. Strength 5, it's -2 to their save.
Oh, let me just check.
They had a 4-up save normally. Quick rules check.
It doesn't say nothing you can't save.
So it goes to a 6-up save. Save 1, 4. The whole back rank of the Hammerers smashed by the Comet. What about the Warriors? 4 hits on the Warriors. Strength 5, so again we're looking at 3s.
2 wounds.
2 wounds. Warriors have light armour and shield.
So no save.
Yeah, that's going to be no save. So yeah, the Warriors just lose 2 Warriors. Oh no! But at least that Comet marker is gone. Right, okay, time for some Dwarven-style revenge. Join me after the end of Dwarfs turn 3. Oh, before I do the Miners turn up on a 3-up? Yes, the Miners turn up. Okay, Dwarf turn 3, here we go. Dwarf turn 3 then marked by yet more shuffling of feet, by probably my biggest 2 heavy-hitting units. And again, I think it's just that I was perhaps boggled slightly by the manoeuvrability of the Elven force, that the Eagles and the cavalry zooming around the place meant that I was wary about being caught out of action. I really should have committed myself more heavily in this game. I mean, the fact that the Miners didn't turn up until turn 3, and the rules in this edition meaning that they count as having pursued a unit off the tabletop, so they just walk onto the board and do nothing else, which for a unit without any ranged weapons is really just kind of a wasted turn. Not the most potent of turns for the Dwarves, as you can see. A little bit of combat took place, but for the most part it was injuries to the Dwarves rather than injuries to the Elves. Turn 3 for the Dwarves, then the carnage continues. The Miners came on over there to try and come and get the Elven General if the Gyrocopter doesn't survive this turn. The carnage in the middle continued. The Elven Champion failed to injure the Dragon Slayer. The Dragon Slayer managed to wound the Elven Champion once, and he passed his save on a 6. 3 Slayers killed by the Swordmasters. The Dragon Princes did absolutely nothing to the Slayers. The Slayers lashed out back, hating the Elven Commander because he's wearing a cloak of Dwarven beards. But unfortunately, even with hatred, they fluffed all of their attacks twice. Meanwhile, over here, the Bolt Thrower killed another of the Silver Helms, bringing them down well below half strength. And the Dwarven units have reformed, ready to face whatever comes their way. Elven turn 4, here we go. Elf turn 4 then, it still remained very much a game of, as you can see, manoeuvrability there by the Elves, Silverhelm spinning on the spot. I really wish in hindsight in this game that I had taken the flame cannon over the gyrocopter. Don't get me wrong, as we've just heard, I love my gyrocopter, I love steam cleaning, but it is not as strong as the weapon from the flame cannon. And if I had managed to hit the wizard with the steam cannon, all I would have managed to do, I think, is cause a wound on him, compared to the flame cannon, which would have almost certainly stood a good chance of panicking the unit and causing it to flee off the board. As we've established in previous battle reports, Michael's elven wizards do not like taking leadership tests. I think also in this I miss somewhat the ability to put runes on the gyrocopter. One of my favourite options from 5th edition is a gyrocopter with 2 runes of penetration, because who doesn't like turning your then as it was strength 4 steam gun into a strength 6 steam gun. Here, yeah, the gyrocopter finally met its end. I mean, this was inevitable. I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did back there in the field. It stood a small chance of crashing on something useful. It failed to do that. Again, in hindsight, could it have been doing something better, like going and annihilated those 2 bolt throwers, rather than fixating on trying to kill Michael's general? Quite possibly. As you can see, those bolt throwers accounted for it this turn, and had spent much of the previous turns of the game just whittling the rest of my units down. A salutary lesson from this game. I'm going to keep the gyrocopter in the list for now, and when we play our next game, I will see if doing other things with it makes it more useful before I make the decision about whether or not to replace it with the flame cannon. Elven turn 4 then. The poor gyrocopter got shot by the bolt throwers. It tried its hardest to crash on the Elven general, but instead landed on the other side of the hill in a smoking ditch. The Dragon Slayer did finally slay the Swordmaster's commander and has rejoined his unit. The Swordmasters, the combined might, the Swordmasters and the Dragon Princes managed to kill a single dwarf. But that is still better than the rest of the Slayers, who failed to kill anybody. That combat continues to drag on. Over here, the Eagle continued its rampage, chomping its way through a Thunderer. The Thunderers failed to harm the Eagle in return. And the Silverhelms rode away again, in typical Elven fashion, riding off to hide behind the tower again and continue to get shot by the Bolt Thrower. Going to Dwarf turn 4. There's still a lot left on the board, to be honest. We'll see how things go. There may have been a lot left on the board, but unfortunately a lot of what was left on the board was Elves. I still had 3 big block-like units of dwarves, but they were getting slowly whittled away by bowfire, and the elven units were, again, mostly untouched. There wasn't much I could do about that, given my lack of additional ranged weapons. End of Dwarfs turn 4 then. The Eagle took 2 wounds and fled from combat, but he flew 14 inches compared to the dwarves' measly 1-inch pursuit move. The Slayers came the closest they've come yet to actually winning the combat. 1 point of difference in it in the combat resolution. And they've got a trumpeter, which the Elves did not bother to bring. Aside from that, the rest of the Dwarven units have decided to get fed up of waiting for those Silverhelms to make their mind up about what they're doing, and are now marching over towards where the action is at, as we go into Elven turn 5. And yeah, Michael, any charges?
Yep.
Where are we charging?
That Eagle is going to charge the Thunderers again, but probably going to get shot out of the sky.
Yeah, I think he might be. Let's just measure. I think he might be.
Might be close enough.
More than 10 inches out. He is... No, he's still within charge range, so yeah. Okay. Eagle, zoom. Don't get to charge.
Silverhelm's going to charge.
Are the Silverhelms going to charge the miners?
It will be in the front, so I think they will get battered with the combat resolution.
Are the Silverhelms going to charge the miners?
It would be...
Or are the miners going to get to charge your wizard?
Well, he won't be there. No, they are not going to charge, because I think they need to charge in the flank to have a chance.
Silverhelms, in traditional Elven fashion, are just going to continue being cowards. Okay, let's start Elven turn 5 and we'll let you know how we get on. By this point, the GoPro had unfortunately run out of battery, as it is wont to do. As you can see, though, most of the destruction was rained down upon the dwarves during this turn. The elves continuing to use their greater mobility to great effect. Okay, so end of Elven turn 5. Combat in the middle here. The Dragon Slayer has finally been killed by the Elven Battle Standard Bearer. The Swordmasters and the Dragon Princes between them have killed
I can lap
a
around.
couple of dwarves. You can lap round, yes. You can get extra models in. We want to do that while I continue filming everybody else.
Yeah, let's do that.
The Silverhelms ran away from the miners rather than do anything useful. This eagle charged into the Thunderers, killed 2 of them, but took a wound in return, leaving a drawn combat. And this eagle is now menacing the flank over here, while those Silverhelms are continuing to do donuts around. I'm considering that's what the markings on the mat are. They think it's a racetrack, and they're just doing donuts round and around and around the tower.
And don't forget we've got a...
Oh, and there is another combat at Cassandora, which, as we go into my turn 5...
Should we roll it?
Roll it. Oh no, it goes off!
And how many inches? 2.
So it hits basically the general's unit and nothing else. Yeah, it hits the general's unit. So 2d6, strength 5 hits on the general's unit. 8 again! 8 strength 5 hits. There's going to be some more dead dwarves. Not too many dead dwarves, but quite a few dead dwarves. That's 1, 4, 5 more. 5 more. 6 up saves. Oh! 3 saves!
Wow.
They just help them clear out the unpainted ones, clearly. There we go. Okay, let's get on with the rest of Dwarven turn 5 then. It's no great spoiler that at least was the last time I would have to worry about having comets rain down on my head. Albeit that wasn't because of the fact that I managed to kill a wizard, but more because the elves were running out of turns on which to drop things out of the sky on me. Finally, though, the dwarves were off and moving. The Thunderers were finally beaten and run down flown down by the eagle. Likewise, the elves killed the last of the slayers in the middle here. We're just debating whether or not the Swordmasters are going to be able to charge those warriors. I don't think they are, but we'll see in just a minute. Meanwhile, the Bolt Thrower finally shot and killed the last 2 Silverhelms over here. And that unit of Silverhelms are just being kind of stolidly pursued across the board by the miners. It's the final Elven turn. Take the dead off. Let's see whether or not the charge is in range. I think you're going to struggle, because you're going to have to get around that unit of...
Yeah, I can do
warriors.
one wheel. Where's the tape measure?
You had it.
I did have it. What did I do with it?
No, I've got it. It's here.
Yeah, I think they got...
Let's see whether or not those Swordmasters can get around. I'll stand and take it if they can.
Nope.
You're going to be out of charge range anyway. So it's a failed charge, 5 inches. Ooh! We might be able to charge you. Not that we really want to, because you'd still strike first in the first turn of combat. You wouldn't, I'm charging.
No, you're charging.
Oh, that's definitely going to happen. Maybe. We'll see in a minute. Dragon Princes? Yeah, reform the Dragon Princes. That's what I thought. That's what I'd do as well.
And they're going to back up.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, I don't get another go, do I?
No. This is your last turn. What's the wizard and the namby-pamby Silverhelms going to do? Wussy Silverhelms. Ones who ran away and then have spent the whole game running around the board.
Well, let's be careful we don't walk into the range of the bolt thrower. We're going to walk forward 3. Let's knock him over.
Yeah, and knock the wizard over. Excellent. Good move. Kill your own general. And then what you do?
Let's just go more.
Just continue to run away.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Shooting then. 2 bolt throwers. Are they both in range still at short range, or is one of them at long range now?
One of them's at long range.
Okay, so 1 at short range, 1 at long range. I'll stay filming for this.
So the blue is long range.
Okay, let's see how we do. 4s on the blue, 3s on the white. Probably about the same for each. Yeah, actually, the blue hit the better. Strength 4, 4s, 3 wounds.
3 dead.
Yeah, because it's -2. 3 more dead. Still not 3 out of. I had 16, so it's still not enough to cause a panic. It's 1 less than you needed to cause a panic test. Might as well just take them off. Okay, there's no combat. Magic. We skipped the magic phase, but we'll go back and do the magic phase. No, we've moved forward. You got go. Okay, 8 casting dice for the elves. Pitiful 5 dispel dice for the dwarves. Let me guess, you're going to cast the Sign of a Mull for the first.
I'm going to do... I'm going to do the sign of a mole.
I thought you might.
I'm going to do it. Let's do a 2.
Goes off.
Pass. And
Yep.
I get
A reroll. One reroll.
again.
You used all the good rerolls up in the first turn, clearly.
Yeah, but one is maybe all I need. Then I'm going to do.
Oh, confident. Okay.
So he's going to do Urnan's Thunderbolt on these guys.
Okay. Casts on.
3 dice.
Yeah, go for it.
And it's
Irresistible force because of the double 2.
6 strength 4 hits. 4.
Forced to wound. Kills.
3 wounds.
3 wounds. I get a save of 6 on 3 of them.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's heavy armour. 3 dead.
Okay, and then I'm going to cast Forked Lightning with the other wizard with the last 3 dice.
Yep. Oh, the one who's hiding at the back. Does he need line of sight for this?
Nope.
Okay.
And you're on the board, which
Does it cast?
casts with an 8. I'm going to re-roll the.
Okay, so that's cast on a 10. You got any casting dice left?
That's the end. Yeah. That's the
I'm going to
last.
use 4. I don't want to risk a double 1. I'm going to use 4 to try and dispel this.
You do spell it.
Dispelled. Okay.
So these guys have lost 3 out of.
13 out of 3 out of 13.
They're fine.
They're fine. They're still not enough to cause a panic test. Okay, no combat then. So we are at the end of the Elven turn. It's just the Dwarven turn left. I'm going to stay on filming for this. I'm going to declare a charge! These dwarves against those swordmasters. And a charge! These warriors against that
Oh yeah, I forgot to move.
eagle. And we can hit those 2 dead silver helms off as well.
Yeah. Yeah, forgot to move the eagle.
I think I'm probably out of range, but we'll try anyway. We're going to try and charge those miners into that dwarf, into that elven mage. Am I within 6?
Nope.
From the closest dwarf? No.
Nope.
No. Okay. Can I take measure over here, please?
You should be in with the eagle, I think.
Warriors are in. Generals in. Okay, let's go. Last dwarf turn. Talk about turning the tide. The last ditch charges by the warriors and the generals unit. The generals unit was kind of a foregone conclusion. The generals smashed the Great Eagle to pieces with no difficulty. The warriors killed a swordmaster. Swordmasters killed a warrior. Warriors won the combat resolution. The swordmasters, even with the assistance of the battle standard bearer, Michael had one of his days with leadership tests. After passing numerous leadership tests all game, you failed the leadership test twice with a reroll, and you failed it for the Great Eagle as well.
And I failed it for the Dragon Princes, but then made it with a...
on the reroll.
Oh no, they passed because they've got
Leadership 9.
Leadership 9.
But yeah, so we worked out that meant that you lost the wizard, who also had... Did I get the extra victory points for that special elven
Oh no,
thing?
yeah, so you get that. Oh yes, I added that one.
Okay, yeah, so the elven mage in there was chosen as the special super precious character of the king, the Phoenix King. His unit broke, ran, which means I gain a standard. The elves captured 2 standards. I've got 1 table quarter. The other table quarters are all either unclaimed or contested. Eventual score then 867 victory points for the elves, and for the dwarves
934.
a very, very close
You
dwarven victory.
You got 500 points with that last charge, so it was. You were
Well done, lads! Well done, lads! Okay, we'll do a full wash up in just a minute. Catch you in a few when we've cleared up a bit. Cool. Okay, that was a really interesting first game of 6th edition for Michael, and first game of 6th edition in about 20 years for me. Lots learned from that, most notably to always check how far away the general is from the unit that is taking a leadership test. Yes, after we'd finished filming that last bit, Michael and I had a thought, we measured, and his wizard lord was indeed within range that the unit that had failed their leadership test should have been able to test on the general's leadership. So we redid the leadership test for the swordmasters on the general's leadership, and not surprisingly they passed. And in fact, looking back at it, they would have still passed had we taken the initial roll that had been taken for their leadership test. So in the end, we called it a victory for the High Elves. I'm sorry, boys. I'm really sorry. Apologise to the Dwarven players out there for letting the side down.
Lessons that were learned from that. Well, firstly, as much as I love the miners models, and I had a lot of fun painting them, I think that they may be not quite right for what I was trying to achieve with the army during that game. Having a big chunk of points, over 200 points worth of miners on the board, not turning up until the penultimate turn of the game, and really not achieving much aside from kind of walking up the board, menacing the Elven General, is not a good investment in points. What would be a better investment in points, I decided, was more missile weapons. So to that end, I've got a unit of crossbowmen that I'm going to paint up, some old metal crossbowmen miniatures, and I managed to obtain a old new metal dwarven cannon to get some extra war machine-y goodness in there. Gonna play another game against Michael very soon. I don't know if he'll necessarily film that one, but what I will do is perhaps put some highlights up on my Patreon reel. So if you're not a member of the Patreon, perhaps take a look there if you want to see how that game goes. In terms of lessons that Michael learned, he has decided to try and experiment in terms of what he was trying to achieve with the Silver Helms of riding around the flanks might perhaps better have been achieved with the use of another chariot or some Illyrian Reavers, just to give that extra bit of bow fire, because that was something I think he found sorely lacking in this army, whereas previously he'd had nice big blocks of Lothern Sea Guard to blast me with arrows during our 5th edition games. So he's been off to the dreaded eBay and has grabbed himself some classic Illyrian Reaver models and another chariot. In fact, I think another 2 chariots. They're going to make an appearance this Sunday, and it'll be all changed on our lists, and we will see how they go. In terms of my reflections on this game, I guess it reminds me about what I loved about 6th edition, which is it is a more streamlined game. It is a game that hangs together better. The magic phase in particular, not being dependent upon the random shufflings of the Winds of Magic deck, but being based upon a mathematical and methodical calculation of how many casting dice, how many dispel dice do you get. It is a better system than the Winds of Magic phase. I'm sorry, 5th edition fans out there. On the other hand, I still maintain that 5th edition is a more fun game. And I'm not only saying that because I lost. I think the amount of craziness that is possible in 5th edition in terms of mad monsters, magic items, and full-blown hero hammer is still more fun to my taste than the, again, slightly more methodical, carefully constructed army lists that you get during 6th edition. Certainly I found when I was kind of working out runic allotments that coming up against the hard cap of magical item points that can be spent on characters, coming up against a hard cap on what the number of characters that can be taken in an army, or the specific units that have to be taken, forces you to build your list in a particular way that I think the more free-form approach from 5th edition is something I prefer. But yeah, it was a fun game, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video of it. Come back again in the future when I'm sure we'll have more Battle Report videos, and I've got planned, much like I did the Lore of the High Elves paint-to-lore video, whilst painting some of this stuff for my upcoming tournament force, I'm going to do a Dwarf paint-to-lore video to make up to them for losing quite so badly in that game. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. As ever, I will catch you next time. Bye for now.